continue for recording this. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. If you can hear me pretty well, can you please raise your hand into the attendees list? Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Terence. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Viviana. Okay, we're just gonna wait 2 to 3 minutes just to get it started. So we'll give people a little bit of time. Currently, we have around 13 people, 15. It's growing fast. So let's give it a couple of minutes to people to log in. Okay, let's wait until we reach 20 people.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, we got the 20 people. So we can start now. Thank you everyone for joining us today in our second day of a 3 days series of webinar, Ignite the Fire Within You. This is a great opportunity for everyone to navigate different situations that we're living under COVID-19, whether it's working from home, experiencing high level of stress, anxiety, and some other mental health issues that are raising dramatically due to the pandemic. But it also opens the door as an opportunity for everyone to know yourself and get into this webinar tools for you to navigate different situations and scenarios that you will have, not only during COVID, but in other situations. So today's agenda, we're gonna talk a little bit of alpha introduction for those who are new. Then we're going to do a little bit of exploration about what is KUMA. Then I'm gonna present my guest speaker, Luis Roman. After that, we're gonna do a Q&A section. We're gonna wrap it up for you guys. Feel free to drop off your questions as we go through the webinar. We'll read them all out for you at the end. Then a little bit of upcoming events that we have for you. Remember that Alpha, it's always here to provide tools and resources. Don't forget to do the survey follow-up after the presentation today. So we have feedback on this webinar. What would you like to see in the future, additional topics, and then present our sponsors. So for those who are new to Alpha, Alpha stands for the Association of Latino Professionals for America. We have more than 45 years of history, and it all started back in the 1972 in LA when this young professional and entrepreneur, Gil Vasquez, decided to create that space for Latinos professionals to have a visibility in corporate America. It all started as a finance and accounting based organization, but as today we cover pretty much every single industry: healthcare, IT, consulting, finance, engineer. So we're always here for you. So we're gonna be forever thankful for Gil for opening the doors to so many Latinos and to all the generation that came after that. We're also proud to say that by 2005, Alpha have awarded more than 1.4 million in scholarship to Latino students who have an outstanding academic performance with 3.75. This wouldn't be happy without your support as members, but also for all those sponsors and those people who make a great impact in our community. We also recognize the power of our Latinas and the great effort that they do in corporate America. So in partnership with 14 Magazine and Columbia University in 2017, we start recognizing the 50 most powerful Latinas in corporate America. So it's an opportunity for you also to make them visible. I think, still have nominations for this year open. Feel free to reach out alpha.org slash nominations where we have more information on that. As 2020, we didn't expect this COVID-19 whole situation happen. So we envision a very dynamic Boston chapter and national chapter. Alpha have more than 20,000 members across the United States and 8,000 members here in Boston, with more than 40 partners and 20 universities. We envision an open organization for you to reach out anytime you want. Talking about KUMA, KUMA is a wellness ecosystem that integrates knowledge and tools to help the human being to discover yourself, to use this to live your life in a healthy way and a joyful also way and passion. This wellness ecosystem and this movement that today's our guest speaker is one of the founders, it's based on three pillars: holistic health, inner wisdom, and empowerment. Today, Luis is going to talk to us about inner wisdom. Today, our guest speaker, it's going to be really interesting to see how a PhD in mathematics and a bachelor in mathematics from University of Chicago and a PhD from University of Minnesota in mathematics found his passion into trying to discover meditation and trying to discover those things that make you unique as a human being. He has spent over 20 years in corporate jobs and academia. Currently, he's the founder of KUMA. He also serves as the senior investment risk manager at Surfside Capital investor. So we're gonna hear from Luis as a professional, but also a human being, how these 15 years of experience teaching himself how to better find in meditation and some other techniques to find that balance in life, and how to approach your journey, how you approach your curiosity to know yourself better. Without further ado, please join me and welcome me, Luis. It's all yours, your audience, Luis.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I saw something in the chat that somebody was saying that they couldn't hear. Is that something that maybe she or he wasn't, just want to make sure that people are people are listening.
Okay, she's good.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Alpha, for letting us have this series of webinars with the Alpha platform. This is actually the very first time that we're able to present this project, this program to an audience in the US. And we're very honored to do so within the Alpha community. Also this week, those who've been following at least the promoting, the advertising of the series, it's obviously about three areas that are interconnected, and depending on whether you have the opportunity to follow them, you will see how intertwined they are. In my case, I'm supposed to tell you about inner wisdom. And I struggled a little bit at the beginning to choose a name that didn't come across as a cocky or pretentious, but honestly, after a lot of thought and search, I found out that something like that, or something close to this, it's what encloses everything that is contained within inner wisdom. But for me to give you a better definition, better context of what inner wisdom is within this program, let me try to tackle that with a question back to you, again, I'm going to ask you really to think for 5 to 10 seconds, perhaps. Allow me to ask you, why are you attending this webinar? I would like you just to be thoughtful and just ask yourself, and obviously nobody is judging, and answer, why am I attending this webinar? And I imagine that some of the answers are going to be around the lines of, well, I'm an alpha member, I'm getting this invitations, I'm about to start lunch, and I thought this was a cool way to kill some time while I'm having my meal. But maybe for others, they've been experiencing, either for some time or more recently, they've been feeling an urge to try something new. They've been feeling some urge to make a change somehow, because there is something unease in the way they feel and the way they are actually behaving recently, or perhaps for some time. And I'll give you an example also as a matter of furthering my introduction and answering part of the questions of how I got into this. So as Alberto said, I was born and raised in a modest middle-class family that drifted into, I would say, lower class over time. But it was a loving home. I received caring and loving from my two parents, 3 sisters, and I was privileged to have access to education. I never lacked a shelter to go. Food was there, and perhaps a combination of hard work and maybe luck or destiny, I ended up earning the opportunity to actually go ahead and pursue graduate studies. And that's what I did when I came to the United States. And then I became a mathematician, and I was a professor for a number of years across the country, eventually became a quantitative analyst, and then an investment risk manager. In terms of health, I've been lucky also, because not any major illnesses that I could complain about. The proud father of a young man who also has been very, very good, or I have no really major complaints about it. And I'm proud grandfather of a 3-year-old girl. So from the perspective of perhaps an observer, they would say, well, there is a fine life. I mean, not major faults, if you will. But still, I wasn't happy. And I have to say that over perhaps the period between 2014 and 18, perhaps I could point to that period as a period where I was feeling more miserable, and maybe not recognizing that at the time. Maybe that's why I could, and that's maybe why I was going every single day, perhaps, and have 3-4 drinks of a hard liquor, because that was a way for me to compensate the voidness, or the feeling of a unfulfillment that was actually surrounding me. So my point there is just to say that even though things or some people might have a life that apparently there are no major faults at a first sight, still we can experience afflictions. And that's what I'm going to call the first sign of inner wisdom. I'm going to say that the first sign of inner wisdom is to recognize that it is sort of inherent in our nature to go through afflictions, to go through moments where we don't feel satisfied, we don't feel fulfilled, even though a lot of or maybe all of the external conditions surrounding us are actually practically just fine. So that's one thing about inner wisdom. At a second level, and this is where my mathematical mind came into place, it was like, well, I need to tackle this. I wanted to tackle really, I used to be one that thought that I could explain almost everything with a formula. So I wanted to tackle this from a perspective of what are the sources of these feelings? What are the sources of these emotions? Sort of the diagnose of that. I wanted to also hopefully know that there was a way to end it. And that was sort of being cognizant that there is a cure for that. And also lastly, but not least, also to know if there were ways, actually, there was a way to actually tackle those feelings and emotions, hopefully to diminish them or even eliminate them altogether. Sort of like there was a treatment for that. So that's what I'm going to call my second level of inner wisdom, is to be aware and recognize that we understand the source of afflictions. We understand that they can be put to an end, and that we're actually on the search. We're aware actually of path, programs, processes that can help us alleviate those. And last but not least, in regards to what inner wisdom is, one thing that I would like you also to think about is how do we experience our afflictions? I mean, basically our sense doors is actually through our bodies, through our senses, but then very quickly they go and reside in our feelings, emotions, and thoughts. And actually, it is said that afflictions actually are more experienced, 70% or more of the afflictions are experienced actually in our mind, so to speak, than actually in our physical or sensorial world. Therefore, when you are actually thinking, when you're talking about inner wisdom is also that ability to understand your body, your feelings, your emotions, your mind. And in the most perhaps general way, I think I would call inner wisdom that ability to see things the way they really are. When we don't have a clear vision of how things are, we have a distorted view of reality. Our perceptions are tainted, and those are conducive to more affliction. So I'm gonna stay with that. Hopefully, this brings some context to everybody in terms of what we mean by inner wisdom. So now that we know what inner wisdom is, and if you can go back, Alberto, I don't want to spoil that font yet, but so how do we develop inner wisdom? Now that we know what that is, now that we know what is that related to, how do we develop it further? Well, because of all of the things that it encloses, the first thing is you have to choose a path, a process that encloses all of that, encloses your body, encloses your feelings, your emotions. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. But in order to embark on a new routine, in order to pick a program, something new, here comes the old familiar friend. Where do you find the motivation for that? Where do you find the inspiration to actually get hooked into something like this? Here comes the typical closer to New Year's Eve resolutions, where you're gonna make your list of all of the great things you're gonna do next coming year. And unfortunately, maybe half year or maybe next or closer to next year's end, you realize that maybe you only click some of those boxes. And because it is harder for others, maybe less hard for other people, but it is hard to keep always that engagement and that level of motivation to adopt new practices, to create new habits. From my perspective, I would say that the biggest motivations that we get, they come from realizations. We get motivated by deep realizations that hit us hard in our core. Some of these realizations, unfortunately, they might come to us as a result of life-changing events. They can come to us as a result of a fatal illness or a really bad illness. It could come to us as a result of the loss of a loved one. It could come to us because of a change in our lives that was actually traumatic. And then that creates a realization that now inspires you. You use that pain or that frustration, so to speak, into fuel to actually engage into something new. But there are other ways to be actually proactive about it. There are ways to be proactive about how do you encounter realizations in your life. You don't want to do this as a Isaac Newton sitting under a tree, waiting for an apple to fall, and then writing your law of gravity? Do you think it will be wise to leave your happiness, to leave your well-being to luck, to randomness, when in fact you can actually adopt a more proactive approach, so that you're going to be prone to have more of these realizations? I claim that it's actually empowering to have that, to take that proactive approach, to take an approach that is going to make you prone to have this type of realizations. And that's why we founded KUMA. In KUMA, KUMA was founded on those beliefs, and the principles that sustain the program are based on a systematic, methodic, and pragmatic framework that makes you prone to have transforming insights. That's what we aspire to do with KUMA. And this week, with the Ignite the Fire Within You series, we're going to introduce you only to the tip of the iceberg in each of these areas. But it's fair enough, and we hope that actually this will motivate some of you to dig a little bit deeper in any of these areas, or more importantly, as a whole, that's what they are. They belong to a whole that should be approached in that way. Before I get into more details about the framework, let me actually tackle another piece of information that is contained in the framework, which I think has been, for a long time, has been sort of a, maybe not communicated in its full potential. The framework is not totally unfamiliar to you, because the framework includes two tools that I'm sure most of you have heard in the past. I'm sure you have heard of meditation and mindfulness. Meditation and mindfulness are actually part of this framework. And now let me also now put it back to you again. And I'm going to ask you, please just use the chat right now. I would love for those of you participating to put in a few words. Could be one word, could be two words, just one sentence, no longer than that. Why do you think we meditate? I would like you again to take 5 to 10 seconds. And if something comes to mind, put out there, why do you think we meditate? And my experience tells me that many of the answers are going to come around it calms the mind, it brings relaxation, it helps me feel better, and all of that is quite true. Those are true results of meditation. But there are other things that I would like to highlight that they come as a result of meditating. They also help eliminate tensions, high blood pressure. All of these, by the way, coming from somebody who's very science-driven as myself. These are things proved. It helps with high blood pressure, nervousness, ulcers, free us from stress, worries, and anxiety. But something that should be actually of very much interest to you too, if your actual health is not enough, is that actually it impacts something called emotional intelligence. And now we can go to the next slide. Because emotional intelligence, for all of you who are either young professionals or you are actually a mid-seasoned professional still working on your career progression. Emotional intelligence is something that became really popular, I would say. I think it happened, actually became really at its peak, I would say early 2000s. And out of several definitions, let's stick with the one that says ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others. Right there, any of you who have done anything in mindfulness would probably see something that clicks. Ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others is, again, it's one byproduct of being mindful. But the interesting thing out of many that comes out of emotional intelligence is that, and again, these are research and studies that were done by psychologists, psychiatrists, and people in the social sciences. They found out at some point that people with the highest levels of IQ, IQ being the intelligence quotient, people with the highest levels of IQ, they outperform those with an average IQ only about 20% of the time. Whereas people with an average IQ outperform those with the highest IQ about 70% of the time. A result like that was pointing to there's got to be another factor that also drives success. And let's not get even yet into what we define as success, but this success is typically what you would expect people in influential and higher positions. Well, they found out that there's got to be something else besides intelligence quotient that wasn't really the driving factor for success. They found out that that was actually the critical factor was the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. The thing that actually I took also during the times when I became more familiar reading about those things, and that's what I put that picture there of the brain, is that in those three touch points, if you will, the spinal cord, limbic system, and then the area in the brain where actually we think rationally. Well, the spinal cord is basically what takes your external input. That's where you get your first signal, so to speak. And then actually there is a path that signal goes through, where it goes to the limbic system, which is where we feel, and then it makes it all the way, so all of this happens pretty quickly, but then comes the rational thinking. To me, that was a really revealing picture because typically I actually initially thought that the reason why I made so many mistakes was because I wasn't giving myself enough time to make it to the rational point of things. But then actually after some time, I realized that this is a sort of a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, you really want to be aware that when you have thinking, it's after the feeling, but you also want to be aware that when you are actually in the rational place, when you're actually being rational, that's when you're using all of the background that you have inherited in your life. That's when you're using what mom and dad taught you. That's when you're using what your religion, if you have one, tells you. That's when you're using all of this construct, all of this subcultural space that is also shaping. It shapes actually, for the most part, all of our actions and reactions. So it has to be taken as a grain of salt that actually there is a process for us that takes place from the initial beginning of the sensory input of things, feelings, and then the rationalization of those feelings. So I hope that with all of this, we have enough to actually be motivated to meditate. Meditation per se is also good. And let me tell you actually when I forget about this. This is so much real and has created so much topic of research. There is, I don't know how active it is nowadays, but there is something actually in Massachusetts called the Brain Institute. And the Brain Institute held for many years conferences that were devoted to the study of the brain. Some of the scientists that participated in the Brain or the Mind Institute in Cambridge, they once actually did an experiment, and actually maybe, Alberto, we can go to the next slide actually. They did an experiment where they were able to measure the electrical activity in the brain. That they would do that with an EEG. And by the way, so it turns out that there is a zone in the left side of the brain that actually registers electrical activity that is related to positive emotions. And it is the right side of the brain, the one that registers electrical activity related to negative emotions. So with the help of these devices, they measure electrical activity in both sides of the brain, and they look at a duration. They look at the left to right ratio. And if you think about it, that means that if that ratio is high, you are experiencing more positive emotions and less negative emotions. Okay, a combination or one or the other. It turns out that they did an experiment for 175 individuals, and one of them was a monk with a very disciplined, routine, dedicated meditation practice. And his left to right ratio was off the charts to the right. It was something like an outlier. So, and this is to say that actually there is something called neuroplasticity in the brain, meaning that with training, you can actually further develop positive emotions, and you can actually diminish negative emotions. And part of that training, again, or one way to achieve that is with meditation. So hopefully, again, this is enough to motivate us to see the power of meditation. But I still haven't told you one of the, I think it's more unknown facts, which is meditation is part of a bigger goal. And what I mean by that is it's part of a framework that we didn't invent. This framework has been there for 2,500 years. It's been spread and taught in many different versions of it. And I actually believe, I'm certain that a lot of therapies applied by social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists have foundations in this approach. And this is something that is basically based in 3 pillars: lifestyle, concentration, and insights. And put in a vernacular way, this is about clean your act, concentrate your mind, and get insights. Okay, so that's what this framework is about. Before I continue with this, and just to make this a little bit more, give a little bit of a flavor to it, please allow me to interrupt even more your lunchtime and ask you, let us take maybe 2 minutes, max 3, and try to do a breathing exercise, sort of breaking that tip of the iceberg in terms of a meditation. And to do that, what I would like you again to do is, if you're working your meal, just put it aside for just for a moment. And we're going to try to do this paying attention to our breathing. And what you're going to be looking for is, before we get into that, I'm assuming you are actually maybe sitting. If you're not sitting right now, please, if you have a chair, sit. The important thing about this posture is that you want to be stable yet comfortable. In a full meditation session, you might be actually for longer time, so it's important to be comfortable. Once you have reached that posture that is stable yet comfortable, make sure that your back, your vertebrae and spine are aligned, and the way how you're going to have the position of your head should be such that you don't feel any pressure in your neck. Okay, your neck feels relaxed. And we're going to visit later more details about meditation, but let's go now on just the purest basics of it. Once you get to that posture, just rest your hands. And again, we're going to do this by paying attention to our breathing. And one technique is that you would like to concentrate on the physical sensations of the breathing. And places where typically you might feel that are going to be around the nostrils, perhaps a space between the nostrils and your upper lip. So you're going to try to feel the breathing in that area. And again, if it is comfortable for you right now, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, you kind of don't push it, don't put any pressure to the breathing. In fact, you don't control it. You're just trying to settle down right now. You're just trying to calm down at this point. And eventually, when you have calmed down enough to start paying attention to that breathing, try to do so. And as I said, you're going to try to see if you can have any perceptions of your breathing in your nostril as you breathe in. And as you breathe out. You breathe in again. And then you breathe out. You try to put all other sensations aside and only concentrate on that particular one. Inhaling, exhaling. So ideally, you repeat this for some time. And let me ask you, and I know this was not enough time, but let me ask you, how did it go? And by that I mean, and this is only something you're going to tell to yourself or you're happy to share it to, were there any distractions? How hard was to actually concentrate on the breathing? And if there were distractions, what kind of distractions were they? Do your mind tend to wander off? Was it work? Was there a particular conflict that you experienced recently that popped up? Was there agitation? Was there desire for something that you've been wanting already for some time and you still haven't gotten? Or was there some aversion to something that you think is going to happen or it is happening and you don't want it to happen and you feel that aversion right now? Or a change that seems to be imminent that you feel afraid about it? Do any of those things come up? Do any of those things come up to your mind as a form of distraction? And in fact, it is a technique for meditation also, that's something that helps you diminish the power of those distractions, to label the distractions. And to label distractions is not about spending too much time on choosing the labels. Typically, whatever first comes to mind, that those are the best labels, and everyone might have a slightly different choice of labels for that. However, there is a set of labels that actually seems to capture most of the distractions. And put it in a very colloquial way, these labels or these buckets for distractions are actually known as wanting, not wanting, too much energy, too little energy, and doubt. And in fact, in this framework, these labels or these hindrances, as they are known, the 5 hindrances, are more formally presented in the form of senses, sensual desire, ill aversion, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. Those are 5 hindrances that typically enclose most of the distractions that come to mind when we are in the process of meditation. And there are practices, there are techniques that address each one of them, depending on which one is the one that is more common in your meditation practice, that help diminish the intensity, the power of these hindrances. And by the way, why do they come up? It has to do a lot with your way of life. And what I mean by this is the following. What you eat has to do with your level of energy. What do you for living? Do you sell arms that are sold and then used to kill people? Do you sell drugs that harm people? Do you speak harshly to people? Do you lie? Do you use a divisive speech? How do you relate to sensual desire? Do you keep chasing every sign of sensual desire that you experience? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I can guarantee you that your sitting is not going to be good. I guarantee you that the way you live your life has a direct impact in the quality of your meditation. And that when you're sitting right there, when you're trying to concentrate, even things that do not appear to be at the surface, they're going to come up to you. And that's when lifestyle makes a whole big deal in this process. Without a wholesome lifestyle, you are limited tremendously the level of concentration that you can achieve via meditation or via mindfulness. So I hope this also shows you then the importance of having a lifestyle that is conducive to concentration. And back to the framework, and I think we can actually move to the next slide, Alberto, now, please. So back to the framework, I try to share with you the importance of a lifestyle, because lifestyle is going to be conducive of a more effective, deeper levels of concentration. And rumor has it that in order to get insights, in order to get powerful insights, the ideal state of mind is a mind that is purified by concentration, a mind that is free of judgment, a mind that is objective. In order to have insights, powerful insights, empathy must be present, equanimity must be present, compassion must be present. And in order to gather all of those attributes and qualities into the mind, you need high levels of concentration. So the way this framework works again, it's in a feedback loop where your lifestyle is going to prepare you to have better levels of concentration. Better levels of concentration are going to lead to deeper insights. Now, as you experience that by yourself, you're going to start building more trust and confidence in the process, in the framework. So doubt dissipates, and then you become more serious about the lifestyle, and there improves again concentration and then more insights. So this is the way this framework works. And this is known as the gradual training. And as I said, as old as probably 2,500 years. You could spend lives talking about each one of these sections. My goal today, besides the introduction to this, was also just focus a little bit on the concentration piece of that. The concentration insights, but mostly concentration. So now that we understand the framework, now that we know what the framework is about, and now that we would like to say a few things about the concentration piece, the question is, how do we develop more concentration? How do we train the mind? Well, there are about, at least, depending where you look, but at least I can say that there are 30 plus different type of meditations. The one that I chose to introduce today is actually one called Anapanasati. In the Pali language, Ana is breathe in, Apana is breathe out, Sati is mindfulness. So basically, Anapanasati is mindfulness of the breath. And the idea of mindfulness of the breath, or Anapanasati, is to basically take any truth or reality and investigate it, analyze it, scrutinize it as you breathe. You're going to be breathing in and out. You're going to be inhaling, exhaling, but you're going to be investigating this truth and realities about nature, about existence. Anapanasati is broken down basically in 16 steps, the whole process. 16 steps where in each step you go through a particular truth, so to speak. And they are grouped in 4 groups of 4, in 4 tetrads. And now we can go to actually to the next slide, Bertrand. And the 4 groups of 4 that they are broken into, that they are called as the 4 foundation of mindfulness. And one is the body, or kaya, feelings, vedana, mind, sita, and phenomena. And phenomena is not really the best translation, but we're going to stick with that for now, for brevity and simplicity at the moment. And the 2 that we're going to be actually talking for a couple of minutes today actually fall within the body. We're going to try to analyze the body, and the very first 2 steps within the body are paying deeper, more attention to your breathing. Okay, so now we are going to go back now to a 2-minute practice, okay? And I'm gonna tell you what else you're gonna do with your breath now. So back to the posture again, you look for your comfortable yet stable posture. Vertebrae spine aligned, your head is not putting pressure on the neck. The position of your hands, typically just let it rest in your laps. And some people, sometimes they actually put one hand resting on another. And that might be comfortable for some people. If you're one of those who actually creates a lot of heat, it might not be as comfortable. That's fine, just leave the hands then resting on your laps. And some people, even if you're comfortable putting one hand over another, they actually kind of connect the two thumbs. And again, you put this resting on your lap. And now you're gonna go back to those indications that we shared earlier today. And you're gonna try to concentrate on the physical sensations of the breath. But this time, you're gonna add another dimension, meaning you're gonna explore more in more detail the breath. And the way you're gonna explore that, or one of the ways, is you can start thinking about the length of the breath. You're gonna start thinking about what long breaths are, what short are, coarse breathing versus fine breathing, easy breathing versus uneasy breathing. And now there is actually a visualization that might be helpful. It's a visualization because it's more than that what happens, but you can think of the in-breath as starting in the tip of your nose, in your nostrils. And when you take an inhale, your breath starts there and it travels all the way through your navel. And when you breathe out, it travels all the way back from the navel through your nostrils. So now that physical sensation that, again, you start off between the nostrils and the area above the upper lips, now you can also include that sort of a space between the nostrils and your navel. And start appreciating the qualities and characteristics of a long breath. What are the sensations that a long breath actually creates in you? What are the flavors? Are there any emotions that you can actually link to it? Something that you might be fully aware now or not, and it's part of a physical sensation of a long breath. Obviously, we all know that as you have long breath, your chest expands. But have you noticed that actually when you take long breath, your abdomen contracts? So now as you take a long breath, try to notice that. Try to notice that, yes, your chest expands, but also there is some contraction in the abdomen area. Stay with that breath, and again, just be mindful of the feelings that you're basically being able to notice as you do your long breath. You can use counting sometimes, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move just to the next, which is now if you bring short breath into the picture. Okay? When you bring short breath, try to notice again what are the sensations of that. Meaning, does it feel coarse or fine? Does it feel easy or uneasy? And do it. Take short breath. Take a sequence of short breath now. And try to feel try to notice what are the sensations you're getting. Again, these are things meant to be done with ample time. But if you're doing this at the time, you're going to realize that short breaths are related to agitation. And in fact, not surprising to you that anger, frustration, it's connected to short breath. So this is just the beginning again. These are just the very first two steps of within the body, within the formulations of mindfulness. Then there are many more things that I have to do actually with postures, and then it comes the feelings in the mind. But this is an example of how the breath body influences the flesh body. And this is how you can start familiarizing yourself with the body, feelings, and emotions. And as you practice evolve and you become more familiar with this, you're gonna be able to be more in control of how you react to these experiences, and basically empower yourself with the practice that will be conducive of a wholesome life. So let me stop here. Again, I'm trying to be mindful of time and see if, if anybody has any questions. I hope I was able to at least communicate something that will intrigue you enough to look further.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Luis, for your thoughts. Yes, we do have a lot of questions to answer, actually. So back to the EQ, emotional coefficient. Is the EQ innate, or is it something that we can learn?
Everybody, that's what the research shows, that everybody can actually improve that. It's a neuroplasticity capability of the brain.
Great. How do you identify when someone have reached the level of being in place to identify those insights? How do you recognize those insights when they arrive to yourself?
I would say that one result of that is the way you're going to feel, the way you're going to start taking. Well, I'm going to actually tell you something very, this is a very good metric. All of these practices are leading to one thing, and that is detachment.
Yep.
If you notice that you're letting go things easier than before, you're making great progress. And again, in the interest of time, I'm gonna leave it out there, but I would say that's a great indication, detachment.
Okay. I know that you were talking about meditation and, how do you take your breath? It's very important. And how do you recognize that, exhale and inhale? Like for someone who's starting to learn more about meditation, what do you think have to be the baby steps that you need to take to have that meditation on point?
There are many ways. I love something that Laura said on Monday, which is, for example, when you wake up in the morning and we tend to just to rush and just get up quickly. We all tend to do that. If you take some time and do a quick body sweep, so to speak, how your body is feeling at that moment, that is already a mindfulness practice. It is actually the beginning of a body scan. And that's, again, something that will, over time, if you're actually dedicating only a couple of minutes, over time is going to also, is going to be more appealing to you to, as a next step in that process, as you start today, start with only a couple of minutes. Laura also said something very important. You have to adopt these practices in a way that they feel comfortable to you. If you start doing this with the goal of, I'm going to sit for half an hour, and you've never done it before, it might not work. But if you sit for a couple of minutes, do these things that we just did today, which I think, again, they were definitely very brief. They were very short. But if a couple of minutes is what you can give today, do those breathings. But try to do it then daily. Try to really start creating that habit and see if that is actually making you feel, if it is adding value, even if it is this small, if it is adding value. When you do those things, you start increasing this time in meditation. I should say that ideally, actually, it is said that for these levels of concentrations, for the deeper realizations, people should have a practice of about 45 minutes, an hour of meditation a day. So again, it is a long way, but the progress and the benefits that you experience along the way, they come pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah. Thank you. I wish we can have more time for more Q&A questions. I'll try to do a follow-up. We're gonna do a follow-up blog on, the whole 3 series of webinar. I'm gonna pass it over to Luis at the end, so that way we can answer those questions through that blog. So I just wanna go really quick on this one. Let everyone that you can be in touch. KUMA have their social media on Facebook, Instagram. Feel free to reach them out if you have any questions, if you think your company organization needs a tailored plan for you to have those employees on point, checking their meditation, checking their mental health. So you guys are more than welcome to reach out KUMA or Alpha. Also remember, Alpha is here for you at any time, not only during this crisis of COVID-19, but also in a personal and professional level. We're always open to receive your questions through all our social media platforms. There's always a Latino there in our community open to help. We have an upcoming event on June 30th. I strongly encourage everyone to take the opportunity to listen this webinar with the Chief of Economic Development from the City of Boston, John Barras, and Rebecca Perez. So it's going to be an interesting conversation how we're going to return to the office, once we go to the recovery phase of this pandemic. Follow up, please, the survey. Give us some feedback on topics, additional things you want to see in future webinars. So keep in touch. Without further ado, our sponsors today: Lead, State Street, Easter Bank, Match Mutual, the Justice Resource Institute, Platinum, KPMG, Gold, MFS, Fidelity, Silver, Bank of America, Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, CBRE, Bronze sponsors. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us today. Please remember, on Friday we have the last day of the 3 series of webinar. I hope to see you all there. So stay tuned, and thank you so much, Luis.
Thank you to everyone. Thanks for making time for us, and I wish you a great rest of the week. Thanks for having us, Alpha. I appreciate it.
Thank you.